Hi, this is praios, and I used to be a professional gambler until I ran out of money. No, just joking. Until all sites finally banned me, so that's better introduction, I guess. And yeah, didn't had much time lately to produce content for my poker channel, as I'm not playing much poker anymore, and was very busy building my second channel. As you can see, already 500 subscribers. And if it continues growing at this pace, it will have more subscribers as my normal channel very, very soon. So yeah, consider to check this out too. And yeah, today's topic will be how to play against check raisers, I guess. We will again watch a video from Phil Galfond. And yeah, I will also give my commentary to what he has to say. I hope that this is going more in depth than the last one, because I could probably make this decent in like 1 minute, but let's see what he has to say.
Getting check raised is never fun unless you have the nuts. Today we're going to talk about how to combat somebody who's check raising too wide for value on the flop. Hey everybody, Phil here. Adjustments in poker are extremely important. It's where I believe I generate the majority of my EV. And adjustments sometimes are kind of obvious. For example, you're up against an opponent who's bluffing the river way too much. What do? Well, for starters, you call the river a lot with your bluff catchers.
With the check raising, it's also kind of obvious, I say. You just bet less. And if you bet, you should have hands where you know exactly what to do. That's why it's also very important to make a plan in your head before you make a bet. And ideally, you should already know what to do in case of getting raised. So yeah, plan ahead. This is very important for poker.
You're up against somebody who's never bluffing the river. Well, you fold the river. And there are actually things that you should do before the river against that opponent to further take advantage of it. But the basic.
It's also sort of boring because he said that he wants to only comment on people who value bet to Finley or check raise to Finley. I mean, there are often opponents and even regulars who check raise a lot, but not that much for value necessarily, but very polarized, meaning that they have a very good hand most of the time, a very good draw, or nothing trying to bluff you off. For example, on these lockdown boards where it's like paired and low card, unlikely that it has hit you. And once you make the continuation bet, they see that and then they try to act on this read. And yeah, yeah, that's already not that good, I think. But yeah, let's continue.
And biggest exploit in those cases, they're kind of obvious. Oftentimes the exploits are not obvious. And so today I want to talk about an example of an opponent who check raises the flop too wide for value. So oftentimes, if somebody's playing against somebody who's check raising a lot for value, they
Yeah, against someone who check raises a lot for value, adjustments are easy. Don't make that many bluffs, and also basically bet with hands where you are comfortable continuing with. And you should also continue with a wider range when against normal opponents, as this opponent is check raising too wide. I think that's already the end of the video. Yeah, let's continue.
feel like they're getting check raised a lot because that opponent's check raise frequency is higher. Now, it could be that they're check raising too wide for value and with the normal amount of bluffs, in which case their check raise frequency is going to be high. It could be that they check raise too wide for value and appropriately increase their bluffing frequency. So then their overall check raise frequency is far too high compared to what you're normally going to face. Or of course, it could be that they check raise a normal frequency overall, but it's just all value because they've gone too thinly for value and they haven't included the bluffs. For now, I want to talk about the player who check raises too thinly for value, check raises kind of the normal amount of bluffs. So what's going to happen there is a few things.
Ah, it's okay. So his range is definitely unbalanced because he will check raise not enough as a bluff, but too thin for value. That means that his value portion is too high and that you have to call with more marginal hands because his value range is too wide. So if you, for example, fold top pair weak kicker or something against certain opponents, this guy's maybe not the guy to fold against if we are in no limit hold'em.
Against the flop check raise, they're going to be under bluffing by a little bit because they haven't added the requisite bluffs. Also, when you bet the flop, you're going to get check raise more often, as we talked about, because they've got the right amount of bluffs or right amount of bluffs plus extra value hands, so their overall frequency goes up. A lot of people, when they encounter this kind of opponent, they hone in emotionally on getting check raised a lot, and they're like, okay, well, I need a plan for what I should do when I get check raised.
I think these guys are not that big of a problem, and you're not making such huge mistakes. The bigger problem are guys that attack boards which are bad for your range, but often also not great for their range, but they put a lot of heat on you because you're just trying to take on the pot, and they play back. And these are opponents which are way more ugly to face than the one he's describing. And I think he should make this the topic of the video and not some random guy who's check raising too much for value.
So when I get check raised, okay, well, here on 10-7-3.
By the way, against the guy described, you just have to call more because he's bluffing a lot. You can also think about rebluffing, but then it's a leveling game. When he might think that you think that he is bluffing, and therefore you are bluffing, and then he puts it to the next level and is re-bluffing your bluff. And yeah, so then you might end up putting a lot of money in, and sometimes he will have it, and yeah, you will get fucked. But yeah, that's how it goes. Okay, let's continue with Phil finally.
Let's say we're in a spot where our opponent's supposed to be check raising, ace 10 plus for value, but this opponent is check raising 10-9 for value.
Ace 10 sounds a bit tight in my eyes. I mean, isn't something like Queen 10 also good enough? I mean, I'm not a no limit hold'em expert, but Ace 10 sounds a bit. I mean, 10-9 sounds more than right. I mean, I as I said, not a no limit hold'em expert and also never work with a solver, but I think these they play relatively loose. So, but he might also be used to the old check raising frequencies from back in the day, as he's also a PLO player, not a no limit hold'em guy. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you know better than we two.
Can be very easy to get caught up in, okay, well, then I want to like bet 3-bet flop with queens, and I want to, pile in money with all sorts of hands, or I want to bet 3-bet semi-bluff the flop more because they have these 10-9 hands that are in a tough spot. And the reality is you're playing against an opponent who's under bluffing with their flop check raise. Yes, they have
I think 3-betting that much is probably not good because he might fold his 10-9 or 10-8 or whatever it was. So just calling and let him value town himself. I mean, probably there's enough money in that you can comfortably call down onto the river and you will get most of his money anyway. So yeah, 3-betting will put you in a tough spot. I mean, let's see what he says.
a few more of those thin value hands, but they still have all the strong value hands. And so playing that differently against the actual check raise does not generate that much EV for you. And actually, if anything, what you need to do is just fold more because they're under bluffing. And certainly once it goes check raise and you call and then you get
fold more. I mean, probably check back more marginal hands, which you might bet against more passive opponents. Fold more with some sort of hands, but also call more with other type of hands, where you might fold like, let's say, whatever, Queen 10 against some opponents when getting check raised, or Queen J or 10 Jack. Against this guy, you want to continue because you even win against a lot of his value hands.
Get to the river in one way or another, and they're betting through, fold more by the time you get there because their initial check raise range was too value heavy. There are some other things you want to do though that are less obvious. So one, which is going to be small amount of EV generation, is that you want to see bet a little bit less frequently on the flop because you're going to face raises. So
yeah, okay, that's what I already said.
What are the hands that we stop betting? Well, the hands that really don't want to be check raised. So with our, pure
Also
air
already
bluffs,
said.
we don't really care about getting check raised too often. We can still bet those. With our strong value hands, we certainly want to bet those, and actually we want to bet those more often. So against this opponent, if you are slow playing some very strong hands at some frequency, you want to stop doing that. You want to just bet those on the flop. And then there are those kind of cuspy.
That's also an issue. I mean, I'm not sure how observative your opponent is, but if you bet all your strong hands, then once you check, you are insanely weak, and you also tell this to him more or less. So this is a what is it? How did you say? Two-sided, double-sorted, double-edged sword. That's the word. Now I got it. Yeah, not a native speaker. Sorry.
Hands where it's like second pair or weak gut shot or like two overcard plus backdoor flush draw. Those are the hands you want to not bet as often because you're going to get check raised off of equity a little bit more frequently. The biggest adjustment to make is not on the flop. A lot of people, like I said, focus on, okay, well, this is what I'm adjusting to. He's check raising too frequently. So what do I do against a check raise? That's not where you generate the most EV. The most EV comes from what you do on the turn. So now if our opponent check calls the flop, what have we learned about his range?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I did not thought about this yet, but if he's not check raising flop and he's check raising too light for value, then he will be very weak on the turn if he just called. Very good point. Well done, Mr. Galfond.
Well, we knew that his check raise range includes too many value hands. He's gone too thinly for value. Where did those thin value hands come from? They came from what was supposed to be his check call range. So now his check call range is weakened. He doesn't have as many 10-9s, queen 10s, jack 10s.
Yeah, exactly right. You don't make money against this guy by doing that much different on the flop. But on the turn, if he just called, you can make adjustments, and these will be very profitable. As you know, you can bluff him more easily and stuff. Yeah.
So now we get, and oftentimes this type of player is also fast playing too frequently with sets. I mean, you're supposed to check raise a lot of sets, but just like always fast playing. So the way to take advantage of this opponent and generate the most EV is actually on the turn with turn continuation bets. Their check call range is weakened, and you can attack that by both widening your turn value betting range and increasing your turn bluff frequency. Now, if you have a read that they end up overcalling turn, or like call with some hands that are too weak, so they're calling the right frequency roughly, then you probably want to increase both kind of proportionally. But if you are up against somebody who, folds the correct hands on the turn, which means they're overfolding because they don't have as many of those good hands in their range, then you want to mostly add bluffs. Now, if you're not sure how they play on the turn and river, the safest thing to do is just increase both. So like widen your value range. So maybe perhaps before then on a brick turn, you might have had like some one street bets with whatever, queen 10 to check back turn and then value bet river.
Yeah, top pair against the described guy is like bet, I feel like.
Bet those on the turn. So widen your value range on the turn and then increase your bluffs so that you're still bluffing at kind of an appropriate ratio compared to your value bets. It's so easy to, I guess I'm repeating myself at this point, it's so easy to get so focused on combating the check raise, but all the EV against this opponent comes from finding the turn C bets.
That's an insanely good point, and that's already making this video worth it to watch. I hope you didn't turn off in the beginning already. That's a really, really good point. And yeah, I also have something to add. Against this type of opponent, you can really turn on the heat by overbetting a lot, because he will have a very weak range and he will be in so many tough spots.
If you have any types of opponents in mind who give you a lot of trouble, please.
Okay, I think we are in the end already, and yeah. Thanks for watching. Thanks for turning in. Like, subscribe, share, all the good YouTube stuff. Don't forget to check out my other channel too. Yeah. Bye.